The streaming world rarely stays quiet for long, and in April of 2026, it erupted once again. This time, the target was someone most people would have considered one of the last names they expected to see in a scandal. Sykkuno, a streamer known for his calm voice, his gentle humor, and what his fans described for years as a genuinely wholesome personality, found himself at the center of an allegation storm that has left his community shaken and divided. But before we examine what has been said and why it matters, it is worth asking a basic question. Who exactly is this person, and how did he build the kind of reputation that makes an accusation like this feel so shocking? Thomas, who goes by the online name Sykkuno, was born in June of 1992 in Los Angeles, California. He is of Chinese and Vietnamese descent and holds both a bachelor's degree in mathematics and a master's degree in statistics, which already sets him apart from the typical origin story of an internet celebrity. He started his journey online back in 2011, initially uploading commentary videos for the game League of Legends on YouTube. For years, he was a relatively small presence in a very crowded space. Then came a game called Among Us, and with it, a cultural moment that changed everything. During the Among Us boom of 2020, Sykkuno's soft-spoken personality became magnetic. He collaborated with some of the biggest names in streaming, including Valkyrie, Pokimane, and Corpse Husband, and his audience grew rapidly. By 2022, he had signed an exclusive streaming deal with YouTube Gaming, a move that signaled just how seriously the industry was taking him. He expanded into games like Valorant, Grand Theft Auto Roleplay, and Minecraft, and over time accumulated more than 500 million views across platforms. He returned to Twitch in 2024 and currently holds approximately 3.9 million followers there, along with 2.7 million YouTube subscribers and close to 3 million combined followers on Instagram and X. For over a decade, his defining characteristic was not just his content, but his image. Calm, kind, drama-free. So when that image began to crack, the reaction from his audience was immediate and intense. What exactly triggered this controversy, and who brought it to light? On April 10, 2026, a fellow content creator who goes by the name HemomalVT, a VTuber active in the gaming community, published a 32-page Google document directed squarely at Sykkuno. In it, she described him using language that left very little room for ambiguity. She called him a serial cheater, a liar, a manipulator, and a predator. She backed up those claims with what she described as supporting evidence, including screenshots, payment receipts, alleged direct messages with multiple women, and at least one voice recording. This was not a vague or offhand accusation posted in a tweet. It was a structured, detailed document built to make a specific case against a specific person. HemomalVT wrote that Sykkuno had been a role model to her for a long time before she came to know what she now claims is the reality behind his public persona. In her own words, she described learning something about him that made her regret a decision she had made involving him. She wrote that he is not the kind, soft-spoken character viewers see on stream, and that he uses his platform and his status to pursue women, specifically those who are smaller or up-and-coming content creators, in her framing because their relative obscurity makes them easier to take advantage of. This raises an important question. What specifically did HemomalVT say happened between her and Sykkuno? According to her document, what began as a casual interaction with Sykkuno escalated with unusual speed. She described private conversations that quickly became personal, discussions about meeting in person, and talk about long-term plans between them. She described this acceleration as deliberate and strategic. What she claims she did not know during any of that period was that Sykkuno already had a long-term girlfriend, someone he had reportedly been with since 2021. In other words, she alleges that while he was suggesting a future with her, he was already in a committed relationship he had not disclosed to her. She also named another content creator in her document. A fellow creator known as Elphilea is mentioned by HemomalVT as someone who shared a similar experience. The document states that after speaking with Elphilea, the two women were able to compare what had happened to each of them and concluded that their experiences followed the same pattern. According to Himamal VT, Sykkuno allegedly took Elphilea to Paris during a 2025 gaming tournament and sent her €500 to help with her apartment move. These are not small gestures. They are the kind of acts that create a sense of obligation, closeness, and trust. That brings up the next significant part of this story. What pattern of behavior is Himamal VT alleging, and how does it connect across multiple people? The document describes what she characterizes as a recurring cycle. Sykkuno would identify a smaller female creator, initiate contact, rapidly build emotional intimacy, accompany that intimacy with financial generosity, and do all of this while maintaining a girlfriend he was not disclosing to the women he was pursuing. Himamal VT uses the term love bombing to describe this pattern, a phrase that refers to overwhelming someone with affection and attention to gain their trust quickly, often as a form of manipulation. She also described what she characterized as a sugar daddy dynamic, where financial gifts and gestures were used as part of the approach, including paying for flights and covering expenses during trips. She wrote that while Sykkuno had been telling her he wanted to move in with her, and within just 2 weeks of them beginning to communicate, he was simultaneously reaching out to Elphilea, asking whether she would be attending a specific gaming convention called Offkai. Himamal VT presents this as evidence that he was not just pursuing 2 women at once, but doing so with coordination, treating in-person events as opportunities to arrange encounters with different people while giving each of them the impression that she was the one he was serious about. At this point, a reasonable person might ask whether Sykkuno has responded to any of this and what his side of the story looks like. As of the time this reporting was compiled, Sykkuno had not issued a detailed public statement addressing the specific allegations laid out in Himamal VT's document. The absence of a response does not constitute an admission, and it is worth noting clearly that these are allegations made by private individuals in a self-published document, not findings of any legal or investigative body. Sykkuno has not been charged with any crime, and the accusations, however detailed and however supported by screenshots and recordings, remain unproven in any formal sense. What they have done, however, is ignite a significant debate within the streaming and VTubing community about how image, influence, and the parasocial trust that audiences place in content creators can be exploited. That word, parasocial, is one worth pausing on for a moment. What does it mean in this context, and why does it matter so much to understanding why this story has hit as hard as it has? A parasocial relationship is the term researchers use to describe the one-sided bond that audience members often develop with public figures, particularly streamers and YouTubers who communicate directly into a camera for hours at a time, day after day. Viewers come to feel that they know these people personally. They trust their instincts, their character, their values, because they have watched them for thousands of hours. Sykkuno's entire brand was built on a persona that leaned heavily into the warmth of that connection. Soft-spoken, self-deprecating, wholesome. These were not just adjectives his fans used casually. They were the foundation of his appeal. If the allegations against him hold up to scrutiny, what they suggest is that the persona that made him trustworthy to millions was precisely the tool used to make him credible to the women he allegedly pursued, including women who looked up to him professionally. This connects to a broader pattern that has surfaced repeatedly in the streaming world over the past several years. Content creators who build audiences around specific personality traits, kindness, humor, relatability, have on multiple occasions been accused of using those traits as social currency in ways their audiences never anticipated. Each time it happens, the community goes through a similar cycle of shock, debate, division between those who defend the creator and those who believe the accusers, and eventually some form of reckoning. Whether that reckoning results in lasting consequences or a quiet return to business as usual varies significantly depending on the severity of the allegations and the creator's response. So where does this particular story appear to be heading? The streaming community's response has been, by accounts, divided. Some longtime fans of Sykkuno have expressed disbelief, pointing to his decade-long track record of avoiding drama as evidence that the allegations do not align with the person they believe they know. Others have responded with a sense that the detail and documentation of Hemomal VT's document demands to be taken seriously, regardless of how jarring it is to consider. The involvement of a second-named individual, Elfie Leia, whose experiences are described as corroborating Hemomal VT's own, has added weight to the accusations in the eyes of many observers. What tends to determine the trajectory of situations like this one is whether additional voices emerge, whether the accused responds substantively and credibly, and whether the evidence presented holds up under closer scrutiny. A 32-page document with audio recordings and screenshots is a serious undertaking. It suggests a level of preparation and documentation that goes beyond an impulsive decision to go public with a grievance. Whether everything in that document proves accurate is a separate question, and fairness demands that distinction be maintained. But the mere existence of such a document, authored by someone willing to attach her name and identity to it, has already altered the conversation around Sykkuno in ways that will not simply disappear. For over a decade, Thomas built something that very few content creators managed to sustain. A reputation not just for entertaining people, but for being someone people felt comfortable trusting. In a media landscape saturated with conflict and controversy, that kind of image is rare and valuable. Whether that image reflected something genuine, or whether it was, as Hemomal VT alleges, a carefully maintained surface behind which a very different reality existed, is a question that the streaming community is now wrestling with openly. The answer, whatever it turns out to be, will matter not just for Sykkuno himself, but for the broader question of how audiences calibrate trust in the creators they choose to follow.